Padme Amidala's first official address to the Senate of the Galactic Republic included a call to action. This call to action, the Mid-Rim Cooperation Motion, was a proposal that was drafted by not only Padme, but Rush Clovis as well, the senator for the intergalactic banking clan. Those who have watched the show The Clone Wars may recall that Rush Clovis had a history with Padme, one that was implied to be romantic. This was further expanded on in the show when Padme feigned romantic interest in Rush so as to ascertain the nature of his relations with the Separatists. Back to the past, in the year 28 BBY, Padme's first year as the Senator of Naboo, the Mid-Rim Cooperation Motion was a proposal to the Senate that served as a response to the crisis on the planet Bromlarch. During this time, Padme was still learning the ropes of being a senator and getting a feel for Coruscant. Meanwhile, Rush Clovis was also new to the Senate, and in fact had been part of the same orientation group as Padme for the newly elected senators that year. During a Senate session, Rush Clovis had visited Padme's Senate pod to inform her about an upcoming reception for the new senators. The reason Clovis gave for this was because Padme's invitation did not go through, and he wanted to ensure that she knew about the event. They then walked together to Palpatine's reception at Padme's request, where Clovis told Padme all about Scipio and his reservations about being a rookie senator, much like Padme. Clovis suggested that the two of them could learn how to overcome the tribulations of Senate work together, to which Padme agreed. This is likely the first of many misunderstandings on Clovis's part, as Padme was just in search of allies at this phase in her career, while Clovis seemed to be already developing feelings. It was at this reception that Palpatine introduced Padme to the Senator Mina Bonteri, who represented the planet Onderon. The two got along well, and Mina Bonteri passed on to Padme much wisdom about navigating Senate life, including the suggestion to join a faction of senators that align with her interests and that she gets along with. This reception is also where Padme first met Senator Bail Organa of Alderaan. Some days later, Padme rendezvoused with her handmaidens at a nearby club to discuss what they've all learned. Padme was supposed to be at another reception, but for the Alderaanian delegation. Instead, one of her handmaidens had been acting as her decoy there so that Padme could secretly meet with her other assistants. Padme was in disguise at this club, but at some point the hood on her disguise fell, which was poor timing because Rush Clovis had also been at that club and was incredibly surprised to see Padme. In his own words, he was at the reception as well and had seen Padme there, and doesn't blame her for leaving as it was tedious. Padme was irritated at Clovis for joining her and her handmaidens, as well as for nearly saying her name too loudly in such a public place. Regardless, Clovis went on about his desire to visit Naboo, and questioned Padme and the handmaidens about the planet. Sabe, one of the handmaidens, expressed confusion at Clovis's appearance, as he was human, while the rest of the banking clan that he represented was Moon. And this is the part of Clovis's backstory that is a bit tragic, but also shows just how privileged he is. Clovis and his family were humans on the planet Scipio, and were servants to one of the Moon families. His parents had died in a shuttle crash, and the head of the very affluent family he worked for took a personal interest in Clovis and adopted him. From there, Clovis's career path became easy, and he eventually pursued a life in public service, and became the senator for the banking clan that his family had such influence over. Padme continued her work in the Senate, focusing primarily on anti-piracy and anti-slavery bills, but trying to venture out and make allies. These allies included Mina Bonteri and Bail Organa, as mentioned before, but also the senators Mon Mothma and Onaconda Farr. Clovis was somewhat an ally, but he and Padme rarely worked together or had any overlapping schedules. But that didn't stop Clovis from dropping by Padme's office unannounced every so often, which vexed Padme's security guards. Padme acknowledged that Clovis was smart, but knew that he would never act independently from the banking clan, and therefore wouldn't make for a sensible ally in the Senate. However, that changed one day. Tragedy struck the planet Bromlarch. A massive seismic anomaly caused severe damage to the planet's aqueduct systems, which negatively affected their food and water supplies, to such an extent that planet-wide starvation was a possible result. Relocation of the planet's population was considered in the emergency Senate session. Chancellor Palpatine ceded the floor to Rush Clovis, who, in his first official address to the Senate, advocated for a survey team to be sent to Bromlarch to ascertain the damage and provide a cost estimate of the repairs, a motion that was seconded by Mina Bonteri. Padme was interested in joining this survey team and did so at the urging of Senator Organa. Padme hurried to meet with Senator Bonteri after the meeting adjourned, who was happy to include Padme in the team. Bonteri cautioned her, though, telling her that the Senate may very well still vote against offering aid to Bromlarch, despite the recommendations they come up with on the survey. It was at this point that Clovis joined their conversation, who offered his own ship for the journey to the planet. Furthermore, Bonteri took the lead in their survey team rather than Clovis, despite the fact that he was the one who proposed it, but he did not mind. Bonteri confided in Padme that she thought that Clovis was a strange boy, and seemed to have the same reservations about the senator from Scipio as Padme did. The survey went largely well. Padme, Clovis, and Bonteri traveled to Bromlarch and gained enough of an understanding of the damage, and offered help where they could. On the return to Coruscant, Padme visited Mina Bonteri's Senate office before the next session, only to overhear a conversation between the Onderon senator and an unknown individual over hologram. We, as the audience, can glean that this unknown individual is Count Dooku, but Padme does not know this. All we are shown is that this individual is instructing Bonteri to control the situation, and that if she cannot, he will handle it himself. During the Senate session, Senator Bonteri presented the plan for the Republic to aid Bromlarch in their time of need, but the Trade Federation's Senator Lot Dodd responded that they cannot ask the Republic to contribute to a planet-wide reconstruction effort, but that the Trade Federation would happily step in to assist if Bromlarch would come to a private arrangement with the organization. This sounded very similar to the plot the Trade Federation had regarding Padme's homeworld of Naboo, and rightfully so, Padme was very concerned. The motion to assist Bromlarch failed. The Senate voted it down. This did not deter Padme, though, and neither did it deter Rush Clovis. The two of them decided to combine their skills to craft a new proposal, one that would directly and financially benefit everyone involved, rather than being a humanitarian effort. Clovis and Padme determined that in order to convince all of the senators to vote for this new motion, they would need to design it in such a way that played to each senator's interests. They spent the next 3 days drafting the Mid-Rim Cooperation Motion. What this entailed was a series of cooperative actions taken that, while it would benefit those involved on each step of the motion, would ultimately save Bromlarch from destruction. For example, they noted that the planet Malastare wants political power due to losing the election for Chancellor 2 years prior. But the two of them alone cannot give them that, but the next best thing was credits. Someone would have to buy Malastare's fuel, a labor force would need to be assembled, and so on. Padme and Clovis framed this bill in such a way that each resource required would come from a planet that stood to gain from the transactions. When all was said and done, Padme and Clovis had stayed up late for 3 days straight with the completed motion. Padme reached out to Chancellor Palpatine and informed him of the address she would like to make to the Senate, and he added her to the schedule. Though, much like Mina Bonteri, Palpatine cautioned her against getting her hopes up. Additionally, Padme noted that Mina Bonteri did not stop by to help her or Clovis with the new bill at all during those 3 days. The moment came. Padme stood in the Senate chamber and spoke to the Senate as one for her first official speech, where she presented this newly drafted Mid-Rim Cooperation Motion. She opened with an establishment of her ethos, recounting the first time she addressed the Senate as the Queen, when she called for a vote of no confidence in the previous Chancellor. She reminded everyone that while they are senators of their homeworlds, their ultimate duty is to the citizens of all of the Republic. She then addresses the concerns that many planets face, and turns everyone's attention to the benefits of the Cooperation Bill, and how it will help all of the Mid-Rim, including Bromlarch. Despite Lot Dodd's frantic attempts to control the floor, Palpatine actually ignored him and ceded the floor to the senator from Malastare, who approved of and seconded the Mid-Rim Cooperation Bill. Of course, the motion passed. Padme's call to action worked, and her first official address as the Senator of Naboo was a success. Of course, the aftermath did have a small hiccup. After the session, Clovis visited Padme in her office to celebrate, and he kissed her. Padme was completely caught off guard by this, and firmly told Clovis no. Clovis was confused, and it was clear that he had read all of their interactions completely wrong, assuming some kind of intimacy growing between them, whereas Padme merely saw him as a growing ally in the Senate. Clovis left her office, and Padme went back to work readying to help the planet Bromlarch. From then on, their relationship was strictly professional, and they rarely interacted. Furthermore, Padme went to speak with Mina Bonteri after their success saving Bromlarch. But when she made it to Bonteri's office, she once again overheard the senator from Onderon speaking to that same unknown individual from earlier. When she spoke with Bonteri, it was clear to Padme that the two would not remain as close allies as they had been previously. And that should cover everything. This video really was just meant to focus on Padme's first address to the Senate and the allies she made leading up to the Mid-Rim Cooperation Bill, as well as her history with Clovis before the Clone Wars, and how all of that culminated in saving the planet Bromlarch. I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you so much for watching.